I feel like I have a fair bit to say here, so bear with us if this goes on for a while. I considered High Plains Drifter to be a major disappointment at one time in my life. Maybe part of me still does. As a 15, 16-year-old, I really wanted this film to be, more like The Outlaw Jersey Wales, which I'd previously seen and was quite in love with. Or, closer to one of the Sergio Leone Dollars films. It's kind of action-oriented. Or even a film that explored multiple different landscapes and locations rather than was set in the one town the entire time. Very small town at that. The town of Largo is quite atmospheric and interesting and photographically satiating given its location by the sea and its eventual red painted hue. Although, at the time, I remember, certainly in DVD quality, I found the film to be very substandard aesthetically at one time. And then narratively, this had nothing on The Outlaw Josie Wales. I have a video on The Outlaw Josie Wales where I talk at length about how much I dislike High Plains Drifter, claiming that the narrative is just completely pointless and nihilistic rubbish. It's just, he tries to teach them how to fend off the eventual outlaw invaders. They fail, and he has to come back and kill them anyway. So you wonder what was the point of anything in the narrative other than just to be a sequence of events to just observe. I suppose there is a certain possible intention within this film to explore the really gritty slice of life, the truth of the West. This is the revisionist Western era, obviously. Even if one particular scene wasn't in the film, I don't know if I'd have cared for it much of the time, but the thing that really put me off it at the time is I see Clint Eastwood as this kind of great, if I say hero, I guess it's closer to anti-hero, but this great kind of badass protagonist figure who, if he's morally a bit grey, he's certainly better and easier to root for than anyone he's up against in the Dollars trilogy or in The Outlaw Josie Wales, for example. But then, High Plains Drifter, his rape of a woman relatively early into that film really clouds one's perspective, how they're supposed to feel about Eastwood's character in this film, the unnamed stranger. Now, if we accept this idea that, Eastwood's character, we're not meant to like him, but we're just meant to watch him teach these cowardly scum town how to defend themselves. He's not very good at teaching them, apparently. Or maybe that was the point, so he comes back to... See, I just couldn't see much reason to enjoy the film for these reasons, essentially. Now I can look at it, and cinematographically, Bruce Surtees' photography is very able, and there's a certain mood to the film which I admire now, although I'm not sure what... There was a certain expectation I had for the film which it never fulfilled. Though looking at it for what it is, I can appreciate it more so. Although I remember, I still felt as though the adoration placed toward this film just seemed to be a whole Clint Eastwood in the 70s can do no wrong, especially if it's like, he's got this Dollars trilogy get up more or less, no poncho, but you know what I mean, facial hair and that particular hat and scowl. Plus he's got guns and he's in a western and he's directing it. How bad could it be? This must be the greatest film ever. Look at that poster. Listen, Josie Wales must be the best films ever made. And Josie Wales is amazing, but High Plains Drifter is just very straightforward. But it tries not to be straightforward, where I can't help but feel as though it more or less is. I wish it's considered a weird western. I wish it were weirder. I wish it were more odd and interesting than it is. I find the film to be a lot less than what people make it out to be, although at the same time, I wonder if it's secretly this rather excellent piece of nihilistic despair, just a very angry and ugly episode, which, you may as well compare to, in some respects, to the nihilism of Pasolini's Salo or Deodato's The House on the Edge of the Park. That's a weird comparison, but I suppose I've expressed admiration and enjoy those films for reasons that aren't overly dissimilar. It seems as though it would be silly to praise those films and then take something like High Plains Drifter, which maybe is going for something vaguely similar or can be appreciated in a similar manner as a space, as a place in time. The viewing experience being a place in time can be similar to what you get in Pasolini's Salo or Diodado's House on the Edge of the Park. They may be a bit inane and absurd, but I don't know, it's in my brain. But I mean, that wouldn't stop me from saying something ridiculous, that being said. It is easier for me to admire the mood of the film now, just watching it as this experiential trip. Although, I have to admit, like, just as I've said before, the expectations I had for this film, just, you know, the coolest, most bad... Josie Wales, essentially. This was not Josie Wales. And I wonder how... It's never been clear to me as to why other people like the film. I always just heard, oh yeah, High Plains Drifter, it's awesome. Oh yeah, Clint Eastwood's the best, bro. Blah, 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 blah. You know, he might be a ghost. And it's like, did you just, like, have the film on in the background while scrolling through your phone? Like, did you just, like, assume it was amazing but not actually watch what you were watching? Or did you just, like, watch this film with Clint Eastwood in the 70s and he's got the Dolls trilogy and you just think, like, bro, badass, bro, and you don't really care what he's doing. It's just... what happens in the film, you're just blinded by it. I don't know. Like, I kind of felt like I was being gaslit with all the praise for this film when I was growing on the internet as a teenager. I didn't get it at all. Now I do. I kind of get it now, although I will say, this may be kind of a vaguely audacious claim, and it's a bit arrogant of me to say perhaps, but I never read anywhere anyone claiming what I was claiming about the film's, the positive qualities of this film. Or I just saw a bunch of, people praise just thinking Clint Eastwood in the 70s could do no wrong. There is some dissent toward this film. I imagine, especially now in places like Letterboxd, there's little love for this film. And especially given Eastwood's own character identity. His politics are very unpopular with a lot of people. I'm not a devotee of his particular political worldview, to be honest. Although, it doesn't necessarily mean I have to... I don't dismiss his films as a result of it. If the films were espousing a certain belief I didn't care for too much, I might, but maybe that has prevented me from enjoying certain Eastwood films, I'm not sure. I used to claim not to be the biggest fan of Eastwood as a director. And there were a few exceptions, Letters to Iwo Jima, and I think it was... For a while there, I used to say it was just Letters to Iwo Jima. Oh, and Josie Wales, obviously. For the more modern era. But, I've come around to that. Eventually, I saw Bird, and that was a masterpiece. White Hunter Black Heart is amazing. And obviously, I've come to appreciate his 70s films, some of the 80s films. 80s films. Pale Rider's okay. Pale Rider's decent. And, it's just... I still find a lot of his films in the 90s and 21st century to be didactic, kind of... Too many speeches, like Unforgiven and Mystic River... Gran Torino. These films don't really do it for me, I have to admit. They're just didactic, obvious, kind of Hollywood, like pandering to very common and lowest denominator sensibilities, I might suggest. And which isn't to say that I don't want to sound like I'm putting people down for enjoying these films. It's like, they're for stupid people, because I don't. But it's not that I think common, the Midwest of the United States is stupid in and of itself necessarily. It's just that, the media that is created for them is treating them like they're stupid. That's for certain. It's just a series of films, especially if they're set in the modern era, in the contemporary times, where a character, usually played by Clint Eastwood, is representative of the old moral character of the United States. And the United States, in the 60s onward, really moves past its true, authentic character. It just seems like they're all the same thing. There's just a series of speeches, and it's not like it's using the medium to do anything interesting, except for just acknowledging that the medium is the most popular way of disseminating these messages, or at least Eastwood, that people will accept Eastwood's message. And so he just keeps at it again and again and again, and the United States doesn't change the way he likes it, so he keeps making these films. It is what it is. What do we do? I'm going to link in the description. I ought to have. I've linked it in a video description before, but not... I've done a few Clint Eastwood directed films recently, and I have not linked in the description yet. Noel Oakeshot's Clint Eastwood Immovable Boulder is an excellent piece of writing on Eastwood. Do check that out. But yeah, so what do we do with High Plains Drifter? I guess a part of me will always remember what I wanted the film to be and what it's not. Looking at it for what it is, it may be just one of the more unique and fascinating modes of intention ever realized in mainstream American or English language film. It's just so bizarre to me that the point of a film was the end result of High Plains Drifter. That Clint Eastwood finished that film and he thought, yep, that's what I want. Is it a film that one can admire because of its, say, philosophic or political gravity? You know, what it's claiming about the world, or is it as a cinematic trip, as an experiential voyage? Is that what we're appreciating High Plains Drifter for being just a series of moods which are unusual to process and aren't explored very much in mainstream films, or maybe even film in general, because it is such a specific mood. It's something so familiar, you know, a gunslinger walking around a town, a single town, and yet but it's not a set. It's a town they've built by the coast, so it's got this lived-in Western kind of rundown. It's I guess because it is, there's such a lack of aesthetic because because of its attempted historical realism and being a period piece rather than a glossy Rio Bravo sort of Technicolor shtick from the 50s, you know. But all the same, I admire the film, I think, without forgetting what I always wanted the film to be before I initially viewed it back in the day when I was a mid-adolescent. I don't think it's the film that any average audience of who would want to watch an Eastwood film, an Eastwood Western, a film with the poster of High Plains Drifter. I don't think it's a film that the film that anyone would expect to see if they had the expectations based upon its poster and the title and the creative talent involved. So, is it a film wherein Eastwood knew what his audience expected of him and wanted to subvert that expectation? Is it a film where he thought that these audiences would be more inclined to... Did he think that, oh yeah, this is what people want to see, and made that exact film? I do not know. I'm not sure. It's possibly a manifestation of his impasse with the rest of the United States as he sees it, and what he wants to... where he feels as though the average American is separate from his own interpretation, what he considers a truer vision, a truer character, a purer, better character for an American. My feelings on this film might shift and change over time. We'll see how this goes. Do tell me your thoughts on the film if you're so inclined. I'm very curious to hear opinions on this one, especially if you're a fan of this film and you still stand by everything, considering this film a masterpiece after hearing myself out. Definitely share. If you agree with me, hey, share. If you want to validate my thoughts, that's fine too. In any case, more importantly than all that nonsense, have the best possible day or night you could ever imagine you could ever have. Thanks again, my good and dear friends.